into the details of the reasons why the UK, France, and Germany had no right to trigger the snapback. We won't delve into those details. All interested parties can refer to our many statements as well as to the letters disseminated at the Council by Russia, China, and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Instead, we'd like to draw your attention to the fact that even Western colleagues, who without a doubt should have a good grasp of Security Council procedures, understand how baseless their assertions are. Their assertions to the effect that Resolution 2231 remains valid and that its full mandate and reporting cycle is being maintained. This was aptly demonstrated by the fact that the instigators of today's meeting, by how selectively they interpreted the President's Note S/2016/44 and the rationale for holding the meeting. We see this as further confirmation that Resolution 2231 is no longer in force, and of the fact that certain elements stemming from the resolution's mandate are simply being used by some Western countries, not because this is what procedure calls for, but rather because it is in keeping with their position on Iran. However, if the politically motivated actions of Western states and delegations loyal thereto come as no surprise, the fact that the leadership of the UN Secretariat has joined their ranks is categorically unacceptable. The SG's report is not just a document drafted by Mr. Antonio Guterres, one for which he bears personal responsibility. In fact, the publication of this report is an example of the flagrant violation by the SG of his mandate and Security Council decisions, which were set forth in Resolution 2231. We won't delve into the contents of the report, and there's not much to delve into. What we will note is that the continued publication of such reports, in addition to other illegal steps, unauthorized steps taken by the Secretariat, for instance, notifying member states about the re-entry into force of anti-Iranian Security Council resolutions, the reinstatement of the 1737 committee website and its sanctions list, as well as attempts to establish the composition of its group of experts, well, they are nothing but a violation of Rule 100, Article 100 of the UN Charter. We reject such arbitrary actions taken by the Secretariat. We call for the leadership to fix these immediately. President, turning to the Iranian nuclear program as a whole, we cannot but draw your attention to the cynical attempts by Western states to lay their own fault at somebody else's door. It's an open secret that the JCPOA implementation crisis was prompted by the unilateral withdrawal of the US from that agreement back in 2018. Thus, it's very strange to hear from the US delegation these very strong pronouncements supporting Security Council Resolution 2231. What happened next? The crisis was exacerbated as the European members to the nuclear deal were not able to uphold their commitments. As a result, the UK, France, Germany, and their cheerleaders not only decided to further escalate the situation by seeking the snapback being triggered, but in practice they supported the US and Israeli strikes on Iranian territory, including on peaceful atom infrastructure, which is under IAEA safeguards. And from these delegations we continue to hear concoctions about a supposed threat emanating from the Iranian nuclear program. And it must be said that they're based entirely on their fabrications. After all, the Iranian leadership has confirmed and continues to confirm the fact that it has no plans to acquire a nuclear weapon. And the IAEA, not once, I underscore this, not once did the IAEA verify the transfer of nuclear materials to military uses in Iran. Every time we see the EU and the US colleagues demanding for Iran to engage in serious talks, well, they're saying this although Iran was attacked twice at the height of such diplomatic efforts, and despite this, Iran actually continued its contacts with the US. Moreover, we regularly hear at Security Council meetings absurd allegations being leveled at Iran, allegations that on its territory the IAEA has not been undertaking its verification activities for a year now, and yet the delegations leveling these obligations can't even name what actually happened, what transpired in June of 2025, what made the work of IAEA inspectors impossible. It was the first series of US and Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. We get the impression that some Security Council members ignoring the root causes of the current escalation in the Middle East, are beginning to believe their own alternative reality, the one they crafted. They don't want to accept what is patently obvious. They are refusing to call a spade a spade. Mr. President, the Russian Federation categorically rejects attempts to continue to escalate tensions without any grounds for doing so surrounding the Iranian issue. We also reject attempts to use the Security Council for political score settling with Iran. These actions undertaken by Western countries first create a threat to the very tense situation in the region, especially in light of the latest events, and second, further exacerbate the procedural crisis at the Security Council, which is having a negative impact on the Council's work across various spheres, in first and foremost as regards subsidiary bodies. Currently, the Security Council should have entirely different issues on its agenda. We bear responsibility for creating enabling conditions for de-escalation and ongoing diplomatic efforts, kick-started with the assistance of Pakistan and other states. They are what instills hope of resolving any contradictions and misunderstandings using peaceful means. We urge Western colleagues to focus on this kind of work rather on their phantom pains regarding UN Security Council Resolution 2231. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
Mr. President, at the outset, I would like to thank the delegation of the Democratic Republic of the Congo for convening this meeting on implementation of Security Council Resolution 2231. I also thank USG De Carlo, USG for Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, for her briefing. We also express our appreciation for His Excellency the Secretary General for presenting the 21st report, which underscores the importance of following up on the implementation of the resolution as the existing legal framework governing the Council's consideration of the Iranian nuclear program, and also the resolution's pivotal role in the maintenance of international peace and security. Mr. President, since the 28th of February, our region is witnessing one of the most dangerous waves of escalation in its modern history as a result of Iran's brutal, unjustified attacks against the states of the Gulf Cooperation Council and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, using ballistic missiles and drones, targeting civilian objects, energy facilities, and vital infrastructure. In addition, Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz to international navigation, creating an unprecedented reality for the global economy, international trade, and energy and food supplies. These attacks have caused significant losses of life and property and have had serious repercussions for citizens and residents, manifested in a sense of insecurity and erosion of confidence and destabilization. The situation continues to affect the people of the region, and it underscores that security and stability can only be achieved through lasting peace, compliance to international law, and respect for the sovereignty of states. Mr. President, in this context, the Kingdom of Bahrain wishes to convey three main messages. First, the Kingdom of Bahrain stresses that diplomatic efforts aimed at addressing the Iranian nuclear issue cannot achieve their objectives unless they are reflected in Iran's regional conduct. Resolution 2231 was the product of years of diplomacy, in which the Council invested its hope to address the issue through peaceful means. However, the findings of the Secretary General's report and the assessments of the IAEA confirm that this objective remains out of reach and has not yet been achieved. The experience has also demonstrated that the problem was never the absence of agreements, but rather the absence of commitment to their implementation. Today, the same pattern repeats itself. only hours after the announcement of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, Iran rushed to undermine its peaceful contact by resuming its attacks against the Kingdom of Bahrain and the sisterly state of Kuwait and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and threatening the security and freedom of international navigation and targeting the commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, including the Qatari tanker Riqayat and the Saudi tanker Wadian. And just as Iran has failed to comply with the obligations of Resolution 2231, it similarly did not honor the commitments it undertook in the recent Memorandum of Understanding, nor did it heed the international community's calls as expressed in the Resolution 2817, which called on Iran to cease its attacks against the states in the region. This reinforces the impression that for Iran, diplomacy is not a path for resolving disputes, but rather a means of managing crises and gaining time. While its positions and aggressions on the ground are expressed through ballistic missiles, drones, and the support, financing, training, and arming of Iran's proxies. What Iran is doing today is not an isolated development. It's an extension of a negotiation approach that has become accustomed to using agreements as a means of easing pressure, while actions on the ground continue in the opposite direction. This gives rise to the question that the Council must ask itself: until when will the international community continue to address Iranian commitments in isolation from its record of non-implementation? And for how long will diplomacy remain hostage to promises that do not translate into compliance? Second, no diplomatic progress will be sustainable without full and transparent compliance with international obligations and full cooperation with the IAEA. The Secretary General's report confirms the continued challenges related to verification and monitoring and the loss of the continuity of knowledge regarding the Iranian nuclear program. It is therefore a necessary condition to restore full cooperation with the agency to rebuild confidence. Third, restoring confidence is not limited to the nuclear program, but it also extends to its entire hostile conduct in the region. We cannot speak of sustainable security or confidence building while attacks against states of the region continue, while targeting maritime passages, commercial vessels, tankers, and while Iran continues to support its proxies and finance and arm them. These practices constitute a single pattern that undermines security and weakens confidence in diplomacy. Mr. President, the experience has proven that agreements alone are not enough. Security Council resolutions will not achieve their objectives unless they are accompanied by effective implementation mechanisms and compliance. If the Council has played a pivotal role on this file, it is now called upon to safeguard the credibility of its resolutions and their implementation, and to confront any conduct that undermines their objectives. The success of any diplomatic effort remains contingent on the commitment of all parties, especially Iran. In conclusion, the Kingdom of Bahrain calls upon the Security Council to continue discharging its responsibilities by the Charter and to ensure the full implementation of its resolutions, including 2231. The Council should not allow for its resolutions or international obligations to become mere texts without implementation. In order to preserve the Council's credibility and to promote peace, security, and stability in the region and the world. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Bahrain for that statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Panama. Thank you, Mr. President. We greet and thank the Under-Secretary General for Political and Peace-Building Affairs, Ms. Rosemary DiCarlo, and we thank her for her briefing. We greet here the representatives of the delegations who honour us with their participation today. We take note of the Secretary General's 21st report on the implementation of Security Council Resolution 2231 of the 2015, which provides an update regarding the status of implementation of the resolution and includes a summary of the latest report of the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, on its activities in the Islamic Republic of Iran. We note with deep concern the IAEA's findings, which highlight the persistent obstacles preventing the agency from fully carrying out its verification and monitoring responsibilities under the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT Safeguards Agreement, and the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the JCPOA. We are equally concerned that the commitments undertaken under the JCPOA have not been fully implemented for more than 5 years now. This has prevented the IAEA from providing credible assurances regarding the exclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program and has significantly constrained the fulfillment of its mandate. In light of the recent attacks against Iranian nuclear facilities and their effects and consequences, we reiterate our call on Iran to cooperate fully, immediately, and on a sustained basis with the IAEA by facilitating the access it requires, providing the necessary updated information, and ensuring the conditions that enable the agency to carry out its verification activities independently and effectively. Such cooperation is essential to restoring confidence and contributing to regional and international stability. We place our hope in the continuation of dialogue between the United States and Iran as a constructive step towards easing tensions, containing risks, and ensuring a cessation of attacks on vessels serving international waterways, restoring free navigation, and advancing towards a sustainable, comprehensive diplomatic solution strengthening regional stability. We hope that the agreements reached will complement the binding non-proliferation commitments already made. Further, we trust that a full return to compliance with international obligations, together with verifiable cooperation with the IAEA, will remain the essential foundation for a diplomatic resolution to the outstanding concerns. And finally, President, we call on all parties to act responsibly and to refrain from taking any measures that could further exacerbate tensions. Thank you very much. I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, President. Pakistan expresses its deep concern at the escalation in tensions in the region, which is in no one's interest. The cycle of violence and instability must end for the good of regional and international peace, security, and prosperity. All efforts should be made to restore normalcy and bring the parties back to the negotiations table. Pakistan calls on all parties to exercise restraint and refrain from any actions that may further undermine regional peace and stability. Evidently, there is no alternative to continued engagement, dialogue, and diplomacy to achieve the shared goal of peace and stability in the region. President, we reiterate our support for the resolution of all outstanding issues, including the Iran nuclear issue, through peaceful means, diplomatic engagement, and sustained dialogue. We have always emphasized that diplomacy and dialogue should remain the guiding principles for achieving negotiated settlement of all contentious issues in accordance with the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. The Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding, signed last month, offers a viable roadmap to address all outstanding issues through diplomatic means. The two parties agreed to address issues through negotiations in order to reach a mutually acceptable settlement. Any interruption in this diplomatic process would complicate the issues further. Pakistan urges all sides to uphold their respective commitments under the Islamabad MOU, which remains an enduring foundation for understanding, mutual respect, and shared prosperity for the region and beyond. Pakistan, along with partners, has been making constructive diplomatic engagement in supporting de-escalation, ceasefire efforts, and the broader pursuit of stability in the region. We are heartened by the expert-level talks held so far and the positive progress made on issues related to the aspects of the Islamabad MOU. And we look forward to continued constructive engagement between the parties. President, as these sensitive negotiations continue, we should avoid any actions or messaging that may contribute to misunderstanding. All our efforts and energies should be devoted to advancing the implementation of the Islamabad MOU. Pakistan will continue its efforts to realize the objectives of the Islamabad MOU, achievement of a comprehensive final deal, and advancement of peace and security for the benefit of all in the region and beyond. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
President, China voted no in the procedural vote on the provisional agenda. We register our regret about the result of the vote. Following the signing of the MOU between the U.S. and Iran, tensions in the Middle East eased temporarily. The ceasefire, however, is currently facing setbacks and challenges, complicating the prospects for negotiations. The proper settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue bears on the restoration of peace and stability in the Middle East and concerns the shared interests of the international community. The parties involved should advance negotiations with a rational and pragmatic attitude. I would like to emphasize 3 points. First, it is vital to maintain the cessation of hostilities. Pursuant to the memorandum, the U.S. and Iran commit themselves to respecting each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity, permanently halting military activities across all fronts, and establishing a roadmap for negotiations and the lifting of sanctions. China welcomes these commitments and highly appreciates the efforts made by Pakistan and relevant regional countries in this regard. China urges the parties concerned to filter out distractions, renounce the use or threat of force, safeguard and implement the outcomes of the MOU, reach a solution that addresses each other's concerns, lift sanctions on Iran the soonest, and strive for substantive progress in the political settlement process. Second, it is imperative to uphold a correct sense of right and wrong. Addressing the Iranian nuclear issue requires respecting the legitimate demands as well as lawful rights and interests of the parties concerned. Iran should continue to honor its commitment not to develop nuclear weapons. As a state party to the NPT and a non-nuclear weapon state, Iran enjoys the legitimate right to the peaceful uses of nuclear energy. The peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program must be ensured through strict IAEA safeguards. The unilateral withdrawal of the U.S. from the JCPOA triggered the Iranian nuclear crisis. Furthermore, it was the 2 rounds of U.S. strikes on Iran that rendered Iran's nuclear facilities inaccessible to IAEA inspections. The U.S. should take concrete actions to create favorable conditions for political settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. Third, the Security Council should play a constructive role. The memorandum between the U.S. and Iran states that the final agreement will be endorsed by the Security Council, fully demonstrating the Council's pivotal position in seeking a political settlement of the issue at hand. Security Council Resolution 2231 expired on October 18th of 2025. The Security Council has ended its consideration of the Iranian nuclear issue. The priority now for the Council is to uphold objectivity and impartiality, allow time and space for diplomatic efforts, foster a positive and favorable atmosphere for negotiations, and avoid becoming a tool for a few countries to advance their own political agendas or exert pressure. President, since the eruption of the conflict in the Middle East, China has been actively working to end hostilities and promote peace. As a party to the JCPOA and a permanent member of the Security Council, China has consistently upheld an objective and impartial stance, stressing the need to resume talks and preserve the political settlement process. China has addressed multiple letters to the Council and the DGA to articulate our views and proposals. China stays committed to playing an active and constructive role in achieving enduring peace in the Middle East and will contribute its wisdom and efforts toward a peaceful settlement of the Iranian nuclear issue. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Mr. President, I thank the Undersecretary General, Ms. De Carlo, for her briefing today. The Secretary General's report on the implementation of Resolution 2231 is no merely technical account. It is also a warning regarding the deterioration of elements that for years allowed the international community to rely on objective assurances regarding the peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. What we are seeing today is not the result of an isolated event, rather the consequence of unmet commitments, the erosion of trust, and the weakening of the incentives underpinning the framework that was agreed in 2015, particularly as a result of the reduced cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has contributed significantly to undermining the verification architecture supported by Resolution 2231. Against this backdrop, Colombia welcomes the recent diplomatic progress achieved between Iran and the United States, facilitated by Pakistan and Qatar. The Memorandum of Understanding is an encouraging sign and offers an opportunity that should not be missed. Mr. President, agreements such as this demonstrate that consensus building remains possible. More importantly, they pave the way towards a negotiated solution with regard to the verification and monitoring of Iran's nuclear program. In this regard, Colombia believes that the experience of the JCPOA offers a valuable lesson. That instrument not only managed to establish limits and verification mechanisms, but also demonstrated that balanced, technically sound, and transparent agreements can be reached even in situations marked by profound mistrust. Today, as avenues for dialogue begin to reopen, that experience can serve as a useful point of reference, reminding us that lasting progress can only be built on respect for international obligations and genuine political will. What is at stake here is not only the situation surrounding Iran's nuclear issue, but also the ability of states to forge and preserve common rules and to trust in those as tools for managing their differences. When trust disappears, uncertainty takes over. And when uncertainty becomes the guiding principle for international action, the logic of confrontation gains ground. To that end, the Security Council has a responsibility to help create the political conditions necessary to consolidate the progress achieved and transform this opportunity into sustainable results. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Colombia. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, for convening the Council for this discussion that stresses the continuing relevance of Resolution 2231. And thank you, Undersecretary General DiCarlo, for your presentation. The proliferation challenge posed by the Islamic Republic of Iran demands this Council's sustained attention, and this body must remain fully engaged. The Secretary General's 21st report, published June 9th, makes plain that except for paragraphs 7, 8, 16, and 20, Resolution 2231 and its associated practical arrangements remain operative. Through the snapback mechanism established under Resolution 2231, the Council reinstated Resolutions 1696, 1737, 1747, 1803, 1835, and 1929. The measures reinstated last September were designed to address a nuclear program that has long sought to advance beyond the international community's line of sight. Last month, the IAEA Board of Governors adopted a resolution which received broad international support and reiterated the body's concern with Iran's continued non-compliance with its IAEA obligations under its Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement. The IAEA has reported that since the military strikes of June 2025, it has lost the continuity of knowledge regarding previously declared inventories of nuclear material at all affected Iranian facilities. And since late February 2026, that loss of continuity extends to every declared nuclear facility in Iran with the exception of Bushehr. Iran has not engaged the IAEA on unresolved safeguard issues, has not provided updated information and declarations under its Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement and additional protocol, and has denied inspectors access to its highly enriched uranium stockpile and other previously declared low-enriched uranium stocks for over a year. In defying its Treaty of Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the NPT, required safeguards agreement, Iran also contravenes its obligations under the resolutions reinstated last fall. Over the last week, Iran has taken actions that defy the substance and the spirit of the understanding established between our two countries. We have witnessed Iran deploy cruise missiles and UAVs, weapons that are restricted under these Security Council resolutions, against commercial vessels lawfully transiting Omani waters and infrastructure in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, and Qatar. Iran's leaders have a historic opportunity to transform their country for their people. The decision is theirs. We made progress in our discussions with Iran with the signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. The door to diplomacy remains open and is our preferred path to resolve concerns related to Iran's nuclear program. We hope Iran chooses to come back into compliance with its obligations and to engage seriously in talks toward reaching a final deal. While dialogue remains possible, we cannot negotiate while Iran reneges on the basic obligations, simple obligations, such as don't shoot at civilian objects. But to be clear, the United States stands ready to hold Iran to account for its acts that defy international peace and security. If you shoot at civilian objects or ships, we will respond. Until a final deal is reached and endorsed and adopted by this Council to lift sanctions under these resolutions, member states must implement the reinstated resolutions in good faith. They represent the Council's most effective, peaceful instrument for constraining escalation and preserving international security. Fundamentally, Iran has contravened international law and this Council's resolutions. Such transgressions cannot be met with Council equivocation and obstruction. In subverting the 1737 regime, UN sanctions architecture that this body elected to impose, members not only contradict the will of this Council, they also constrain the non-kinetic tools available to resolve conflict. Again, President Trump prefers peace. And we urge fellow Council members to join us in upholding the instruments of this body. Thank you, Mr. President.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of the United States. I now give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me also thank Undersecretary DiCarlo